First class smelled like cold champagne and synthetic civility, the kind of polished quiet that made every misstep echo louder. Ava Kingsley sat in seat 2A, posture perfect, legs crossed, fingers resting on the leather armrest like she belonged to the chair more than the chair belonged to the aircraft. Her white blazer remained immaculate despite Harper's relentless bouncing. "Mommy, is that the pilot?" Harper whispered, eyes wide, face pressed against the window as the crew boarded. She had a pink headband that kept slipping and a stuffed otter on her lap. "Co-pilot, I think. The pilot's older. Grayer." Harper giggled. "He looks like Grandpa Solomon." Ava smiled faintly. "Don't let him hear that." Across the aisle, a man in a navy suit adjusted his cufflinks and glanced over with a smirk. A flight attendant, tall, blonde, seasoned, offered him a menu with exaggerated deference. Ava returned to her tablet. 2 emails flagged urgent, one from the COO of Kingsley Aviation, and one from her father's personal assistant. She didn't open either. Instead, she tapped open Harper's movie list and handed her the headphones. "Remember, no volume above 7, Ava said. "Got it, Mom." She was so careful. So obedient. Always. Ava's fingers lingered on Harper's cheek for a second longer than necessary. Then came the voice, sharp, clipped. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Megan, and I'll be your lead flight attendant today. Please buckle up and keep aisles clear until we're at cruising altitude. If you need anything, let us know." Megan Doyle didn't look at the passengers when she spoke. She walked with a practiced smile and a stiffness in the shoulders. When she passed Ava and Harper, she gave them the briefest glance before continuing, "No warmth, no welcome." That didn't bother Ava. She wasn't here to be liked. 20 minutes into the flight, Harper shifted in her seat, trying to pour herself another cup of orange juice with trembling little hands. The turbulence was light, but enough to tip the glass just as she tilted it. A bright splash of citrus hit Megan's crisp uniform as she passed. There was a pause, long enough to let tension harden. Megan froze. Looked down. Then at Harper. Harper gasped. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." Ava hadn't even looked up yet. "Oh, for God's sake," Megan muttered. She grabbed a napkin from the cart and dabbed the juice like it burned. "It was an accident," Ava said, voice calm, her eyes still on her tablet. Megan forced a smile. "Yes, well, maybe next time you can teach your daughter to use both hands, Ms." Her eyes flicked to Ava's boarding pass. "Kingsley." Ava met her gaze then, direct, unbothered. "I'll make sure she attends a course before our next flight." The sarcasm didn't land. Megan flushed. The man in 2B chuckled. "Kids these days. No discipline." "Or parents," Megan added quietly, not quite under her breath. Ava looked back at her tablet. "Is that how you speak to all your passengers, or just the ones who don't look like they own a jet?" Megan's jaw tensed. "Excuse me?" "You're excused," Ava said coldly. "You may continue your duties." For a moment, silence blanketed the cabin. Megan turned abruptly and stormed toward the galley. Ava let out a breath. Harper leaned into her. "I didn't mean to spill it, Mommy." "I know, baby. You don't need to explain." But she looked mad. "She is mad," Ava said. "Some people are always mad, especially when they don't understand the room they're in." 30 minutes later, Megan returned, smile plastic. She leaned over toward Harper with a tray of fresh juice. "Let's try again, okay, sweetie? I'm sure you can do better this time." Harper hesitated. Ava raised an eyebrow. Megan smiled wider. "Come on, we'll do it together." She extended the cup, then suddenly, her hand whipped across and slapped Harper's small hand away from the tray. The juice spilled again, this time on Harper's lap. Ava didn't move. Gasps erupted from the passengers in the surrounding rows. "Are you insane?" someone whispered aloud. The man in 2B stood up. "Ma'am, I saw that. You hit her." Megan blinked. "I was trying to stop another spill." She almost dropped it again. "She's 7. Ava's voice was still calm, too calm. "She can spill whatever she wants." Megan's composure cracked. "Maybe if you actually parented her." Ava reached for her phone. Didn't scream. Didn't curse. Just dialed. "It's Ava. The incident happened. Proceed immediately and disable all crew access for Flight 611. A brief pause. "Yes. All of them." Megan's eyes widened. "Wait, what? What the hell are you doing?" But Ava had already hung up. In the cockpit, the pilot's security clearance began to vanish. In Atlanta, red alerts pinged across the operations center. 3 executives stood from a conference table and began barking orders. Within 10 minutes, the Atlantic Way crew roster showed 5 names marked for urgent review. Megan's access badge flashed, revoked. Back in the sky, Megan hovered near the first-class curtain, breath shallow. "What did you just do?" she asked again, but softer now. Ava didn't look up. Harper clutched her otter. "I'm going to lose my job over a glass of juice," Megan snapped, louder. "You're insane. You think you can just..." Ava turned to her daughter. "Harper, do you want to go to the restroom and wash your hands?" Harper nodded, eyes glassy. Ava stood and took her hand. They passed Megan without a word. The silence that trailed behind them weighed more than any shouting ever could. And somewhere, 38,000 feet below, the system had already begun to shift. By the time Flight 611 began its descent into Los Angeles, the air in first class was frigid with tension. The flight attendants avoided eye contact with Ava. Megan sat in the jump seat, pale, trembling, whispering to the crew chief. Her authority had collapsed in midair. Passengers filmed discreetly. The man in 2B had already posted a tweet. Witnessed flight attendant slap a child in first class on Flight 611. The mother made one call. Chaos ever since. Something big's happening. He didn't know how right he was. Inside the Kingsley Group headquarters in Midtown Manhattan, a private boardroom was already lit up with satellite footage and internal systems data. A security advisor read a summary aloud. Incident involved physical contact initiated by lead flight attendant Megan Doyle on minor passenger Harper Kingsley. Video evidence secured. Viral potential confirmed. Across the room, Solomon Kingsley didn't flinch. He only asked one thing. "Did Ava speak to the press?" "No, sir. She hasn't spoken to anyone outside protocol." He nodded, fingers steepled. "Good. Let the narrative build on its own." At LAX, the aircraft docked quietly. But instead of the usual announcement, passengers were asked to remain seated. A group of men and women in dark suits boarded first class. They didn't smile. "Miss Doyle, please come with us." "What? I have rights. This is absurd." Her voice cracked as she stood, looking around for support. None came. Ava gently nudged Harper forward. "Stay with me," she whispered. Harper clutched her otter tighter and leaned into her mother's side as they walked down the jet bridge. Passengers watched silently. Ava's heels clicked in perfect rhythm. Harper's steps matched them, smaller and softer. Outside the terminal doors, Ava's driver waited, black car idling. Before stepping in, Harper looked up at her mother. She was scared. Ava paused. "Yes. But she was also mean." Ava nodded. "That's the worst kind of scared." Harper leaned her head against Ava's arm as the door closed. The media exploded. Within hours, the video of the slap went viral. Overnight. It wasn't just the hit, it was Harper's face afterward. Her silence. The restraint. And then Ava's voice, calm, measured, final. The incident happened. Proceed immediately. Hashtags flooded, hashtag justice for Harper, hashtag flight 611, hashtag Kingsley knows. Morning shows debated it. News anchors analyzed her tone. Ava didn't respond to a single request for comment. Meanwhile, at the Atlantic Way executive floor in Atlanta, panic turned into blame. The company's CEO, Carter Donnelly, called an emergency session with the Board of Governance. He paced in his office, sweat at the collar of his button-down. 31%, he muttered. She owns 31%. One of his advisors cleared his throat. Technically, her father does. No, Carter snapped. You saw the footage. You think Solomon Kingsley lifts a finger for this? This was Ava. All of it. And he was right. Ava hadn't come on flight 611 by chance. She chose it. She had studied the rosters. She knew the odds. She knew Megan Doyle would be there. She was hoping for a moment. She just hadn't expected it to come at her daughter's expense. That evening, in their penthouse suite overlooking Beverly Hills, Harper sat curled on the couch, her knees hugged tight to her chest. Why are people so angry on TV? She asked. They're not angry at you, Ava said, tucking a blanket around her. They're angry at what they saw. Harper's voice dropped. Because I got hit? Ava hesitated. Because people watched someone hurt a child, and for once, they couldn't ignore it. Harper looked at her mother. You weren't mad when it happened. Ava sat down beside her. I was. But anger isn't always loud. Harper thought for a moment. Is that why you called that man? The one on the phone? Ava smiled faintly. Yes. Do you always call him when you're mad? No, sweetheart. Only when I want to change the rules. But Ava wasn't done. The incident had given her the moment she needed. Now she could begin the real work, the part she had kept hidden for 7 years. In the quiet of the night, Ava opened a locked folder on her encrypted drive. It was labeled simply, Tessa. Inside were flight logs, photos, security reports, internal complaints. One dated December 7, 2018. Passenger Tessa Kingsley, 29, removed from Flight 886 after alleged disruptive behavior. Medical incident occurred post-removal. Fatal. No press. No investigation. Just medical incident. Tessa had died in the airport's medical wing after being forcibly removed by security. A removal triggered by a dispute with a flight attendant, the same one Ava discovered later had worked the route that day, Megan Doyle. The report never reached the board. No apology was ever made. Tessa was Ava's little sister. And Harper's biological mother. Ava remembered the call like it was still ringing in her bones. Ma'am, I'm afraid your sister collapsed after a misunderstanding at the gate. The paramedics, well, there was nothing they could. She had dropped the phone. Ava had been in Singapore. Meetings. Presentations. Charts. She hadn't spoken to Tessa in 3 weeks. She was supposed to fly back for Christmas. She didn't even know Tessa had relapsed. And by the time she tried to file a complaint, the airline had already cleaned the records. Her own father had warned her. Don't dig, Solomon had said. There's no upside in dragging skeletons into daylight. Let it lie, Ava. So she let it lie. For years. On the outside. But inside, she built something. Ava clawed her way higher through the Kingsley Group. took over Kingsley Aviation's compliance division. Quietly began a personal audit of Atlantic Way's employment files. She never mentioned Tessa again. Not to Harper. Not to her father. Not to the board. But when she saw Megan Doyle's name resurface on the crew manifest for Flight 611, she booked the seat. First class. Window. And now the world was watching. Ava knew the company would spin it. Try to control the damage. But what came next, the next leak, the next document, the next whistleblower? That wasn't up to them anymore. They had triggered it themselves. All she had to do was wait. 3 days after Flight 611 landed, the world knew Ava Kingsley by name. She hadn't posted a single word. No press conference. No statement. And still, every network ran her image, walking off the plane in a white blazer, one hand on her daughter's back. The silence made people lean in. The restraint made it impossible to look away. The board at Atlantic Way convened twice daily. Shareholders demanded answers. Crisis consultants flooded the HQ in Atlanta. Stock prices trembled like glass on the edge of a table. What no one inside those panic rooms knew yet, what even Solomon Kingsley hadn't anticipated, was that Ava hadn't lost control on that plane. She had seized it. On the fourth morning, just before dawn, Ava arrived unannounced at the Atlantic Way campus. Alone. Reception didn't question her. She didn't need a badge. She took the elevator to the 32nd floor and stepped into the legal conference room. Inside, CEO Carter Donnelly. 3 board members. The company's general counsel. And Solomon Kingsley himself. Her father didn't stand. Ava. Good morning, she said simply. Carter offered a polite smile, visibly sweating. We weren't expecting you. You weren't supposed to. She placed a sealed manila envelope on the table and sat down. This, Ava began, is a notarized statement and supporting evidence. It contains the unedited internal report of Flight 886, dated December 7, 2018. The day my sister, Tessa Kingsley, died. Carter stiffened. The lawyer flinched. Solomon closed his eyes. I believe, Ava continued, it also includes employee incident logs and behavior flags tied to Megan Doyle, which were deleted from her file during her transfer to West Coast rotation. She paused, letting that land. The logs indicate repeated complaints. Mostly ignored. One of the board members finally spoke. Ava, we were told that incident was medical. She was dragged from the aircraft by airport security after an argument with a flight attendant, Ava said, eyes never leaving her father. She collapsed minutes later. The coroner's report showed blunt trauma to the ribs. She had asthma. The silence rang louder than any objection. I spent years gathering this, Ava said, voice steady. It wasn't easy. Do you know why? Carter tried to respond, but Ava cut in. Because this company has a culture of silencing victims. And not just passengers, employees. Especially women. Especially women who don't fit your mold of quiet compliance. She let it hang. Solomon finally spoke. Why now? Ava's eyes narrowed. Because I warned you then. I begged you to act. And you told me to bury it. You said there was no upside in dragging skeletons into daylight. She stood. Voice unwavering. Turns out, some skeletons walk themselves out. If you wait long enough. The next morning, Ava released a public letter. No cameras. No stage. Just a quiet post on the Kingsley Group website. My name is Ava Kingsley. I am the aunt and legal guardian of Harper Kingsley, the daughter of my late sister, Tessa. In December of 2018, Tessa boarded an Atlantic Way flight. She never made it home. Her death was categorized as a medical incident. But it was avoidable. And it was buried. This week, my daughter was assaulted by the same woman who escalated the incident that cost Tessa her life. My silence ends here. The post included scanned documentation, internal reports, photos, logs, a timeline. Within hours, it detonated across the country. Talk shows turned solemn. Anchors stunned. The slap that outraged the nation was now part of something much darker. A death. A system. A rot that had lived behind prestige and polish for too long. Atlantic Way fell into crisis. The FAA opened a formal investigation. Former flight attendants came forward. One video showed Meghan berating a non-English-speaking passenger. Another, laughing about emotional passengers and their tantrums. Carter Donnelly was forced to resign within 48 hours. And Meghan. She was tracked down by a news crew in a strip mall parking lot in Van Nuys. Her hands trembled as she opened her car door. "It wasn't my fault," she shouted. "That girl's mom, Tessa, she was already high. She was screaming. I was just doing my job." But the damage was done. She was charged with reckless endangerment and obstruction of an investigation tied to falsified reports. No one came to her defense. Not even her union. At home, Ava found Harper sitting on the floor with a scrapbook open. Pages of pictures she'd never seen before. A woman with soft curls and a wide, sleepy smile. "Tessa. Is that her?" Harper asked. Ava knelt beside her. "Yes. Why didn't you ever tell me?" Ava took a long breath. "Because I wasn't ready. And I didn't want you to carry my anger. You deserved peace." Harper looked up. "But now everybody knows." Ava nodded. "Yes. And maybe now she can rest. And we can live." Harper leaned into her. "I still want you to be my mom." Ava wrapped her arms around her and whispered. "I always was." Solomon Kingsley called Ava a week later. She didn't pick up the first time. On the second call, she answered. "You wanted me to suffer," he said. "No," Ava replied. "I wanted the truth to matter more than your comfort. You humiliated the company. Your name's on every paper in the country." "So is Tessa's," she said. He went quiet. Then finally, he asked. "What do you want, Ava?" "I already took it," she said. "But if you want to be useful again, start building a policy that protects people. Not just the brand. And after that, we'll see." Days later, the Atlantic Way Board voted to grant Ava full oversight over a new ethics and oversight division. Independent from legal and HR. It would report directly to shareholders, not executives. It was, in effect, a corporate conscience. Built by the very woman they once underestimated. Weeks passed. Harper went back to school. Her friends had seen her face on TV. Some asked questions, some just hugged her. At night, Ava read her stories. They didn't talk much about planes anymore, but sometimes Ava would pause and look out the window at the blinking lights in the sky. "Do you miss her?" Harper asked once. "Every day," Ava whispered. And sometimes, in the quiet after bedtime, she would think of her sister, loud, flawed, brilliant Tessa, and wonder what she'd say now. Probably something crude, or brave, or both. The news cycle, as always, moved on. By the second month, the hashtags faded. A new scandal in Washington. A celebrity breakup. A wildfire in Arizona. Ava watched it all from her kitchen window while Harper assembled a science fair project. Today, the dining table. The air was quieter now, but not easier. Ava stood in front of a mirror she hadn't looked into properly in weeks. She touched the rim of her eye, traced the faint shadows of exhaustion. The sharpness in her jaw remained, but something behind her eyes had softened, or broken. She had taken down an empire's wall, but she'd done it with surgical calm. No crying on talk shows. No memoir deal. No social media crusade. And yet, her name was now a symbol in HR compliance workshops across Fortune 500 companies. The AVA effect, some called it. She hated that. The first call came from a lawyer representing the family of a Nigerian immigrant who had been denied boarding in 2019 after a false accusation by a flight attendant. No injuries, but a ruined visa and 5 months of legal fallout. The case was settled quietly. The second was from a whistleblower inside Atlantic Way, a senior flight operations manager who had been compiling evidence for years. "Your story gave us permission to stop pretending," he said. "And now they're listening." Ava didn't say much. Just nodded. At Harper's school, things changed in quieter ways. Some parents became strangely warm, overly apologetic when they ran into Ava at pickup. One mother leaned in and whispered, "We're so proud of you." Proud, as if Ava had run a race, instead of survived a buried family tragedy with her daughter in tow. But Harper didn't need anyone to explain. She was writing a report called, "My Mom is the Boss of Fixing Things." It was stapled together in 3 pages and ended with a drawing of a plane with flowers on the wings. Meanwhile, Megan Doyle's story had taken a darker turn. No new job offers. No public sympathy. She gave one interview, shaky and defensive, filmed in a motel outside Reno. She claimed she'd been made a scapegoat. That Ava was a manipulator. That Harper probably wasn't even scared. The clip went viral, but not the way she'd hoped. The comments were ruthless. The sponsors of the segment pulled funding. She vanished from public view after that. No lawsuit ever materialized. She knew it would be crushed in discovery. Ava visited Tessa's grave for the first time in over a year. She brought no flowers, just Harper's drawing, folded in her coat pocket. It was raining lightly, a thin, misty drizzle that blurred the marble lettering. "She's getting so big," Ava said quietly. "And she's smart. She already knows you weren't just some ghost we never talk about." She crouched to brush away a few wet leaves near the stone. "I did it," she whispered. "It took 7 years, but I did it." A long silence stretched. "She'll know the whole truth when she's ready. I won't hide anything from her." Ava stood. Her breath fogged in the air. "You deserved a better ending. But maybe Harper's is just beginning." Back at Kingsley Group, things weren't exactly peaceful. The Ethics and Oversight Division was up and running, but the resistance from old power structures was immediate and tense. Solomon had not spoken to Ava in weeks, not after their last call. But he watched her moves like a chess master, wary of a rising rival. She knew he'd never admit it, but he respected what she'd done, even as he resented the cost. Then came the message. It arrived on her encrypted terminal, flagged from a restricted internal node. Sender, S. Kingsley. Subject, Zurich. The message was short. "Your audit of Zurich Holdings triggered international inquiries. Well played. But careful. This isn't just policy anymore. It's blood." Ava stared at the screen. Her father never said, "Well played." Not to anyone. And the word blood wasn't metaphor. She knew what it meant. There were more secrets. Bigger ones. Not just in aviation. But Harper was 7. Teeth were coming loose. She had a dance recital next month, so Ava didn't respond, not yet. She closed the laptop, sat beside her daughter, watched her try to tape wings onto a clay bumblebee for a school project about flying things. Harper looked up. "Do you think bees ever get scared when they fly?" Ava smiled. Probably. Harper nodded seriously. But they fly anyway. Exactly, Ava said. And for the first time in months, she laughed, full and quiet, like something locked inside her had finally shifted. The sound filled the room, soft and real. 6 months later, no one remembered Flight 611 by number, but its consequences still echoed in places that mattered. Atlantic Way's branding had changed, subtly, at first. Uniforms redesigned. Crew training revamped. New signage across terminals with words like accountability and respect takes flight. It was good PR. But the real change lived in documents Ava reviewed at midnight, internal reports flagged by her team. Names she never knew. Incidents that would have once been buried now surfaced within hours. Not every one of them was explosive. Most were quiet. Human. A stewardess covering for a drunk colleague. A supervisor calling an employee too dark for the front desk. A child with autism removed from a flight after a misunderstanding. Ava read them all. And when it mattered, she acted. Harper had stopped asking about the slap. It had faded for her into something distant, like a sharp pebble you step on barefoot once but never forget how to avoid again. But she did ask about her mother, her real one. Did she look like me? Yes, Ava said. She had your mouth. And your stubborn little chin. Was she funny? Only when she wasn't trying to be. They started sharing pieces of Tessa slowly, like puzzle fragments, with no pressure to finish the picture. Sometimes Harper would hum a melody Ava hadn't taught her, a tune Tessa used to sing in college, and Ava would pause whatever she was doing, heart folding quietly, wondering how memory could live in blood. The Kingsley Group offered Ava a seat on the executive board. It was supposed to be a reward, a coronation, of sorts. She declined. She stayed with oversight. Kept her corner office. Built a team from the ground up, analysts, auditors, social workers, a grief counselor, not just to process complaints, but to understand the people behind them. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was the kind that left ripples. One by one, other corporations reached out. Aviation first. Then rail. Hospitality. Hospitals. Banks. Could you help us build what you built there? They asked. And Ava would reply the same each time. Only if you let it cost you something. One crisp October morning, Solomon Kingsley arrived at her building without an appointment. He stood in the lobby in a tailored coat and asked the receptionist to announce him. She didn't. Instead, she called Ava directly. There's a Mr. Kingsley here. Ava took her time. When she stepped into the glass lobby, Harper's ballet recital program still folded in her hand, Solomon turned and gave a tight smile. You look rested, he said. You look older. He chuckled. I suppose we both paid something. I paid with time, Ava said. You paid with silence. They walked outside together. She didn't invite him up. I was wrong to stop you, he said. Back then, yes. And I was wrong to think this company could protect its soul by hiding from its sins. You were just protecting yourself? He nodded without argument. And Harper? He asked gently. She's doing better than all of us, Ava said. Because no one lied to her. He paused, hands deep in his coat pockets. Do you want to come to dinner? He asked. She thought about it. I'll let Harper decide, she replied. He smiled again, not proud, not smug, just small. Human. Fair enough. That night, Harper chose takeout on the floor and cartoons. No dinner with Grandpa. Maybe next time. They sat with boxes of noodles between them, laughing at animated disasters and nonsensical plots. At one point, Harper turned and asked. Do you think being strong means not crying? Ava looked at her. No. I think being strong means knowing when it's time to cry, and when it's time to build. Harper nodded, chewing quietly. I think I want to build stuff. You already do. Like what? Ava smiled. Like me. A few months later, Ava stood on a stage at a quiet industry event in Boston. Not televised. Not recorded. Just a gathering of professionals talking about safety, accountability, and trust. A panelist asked her what changed her career path. Ava didn't give them the dramatic answer. She just said, "Sometimes you fix things because you're tired of being quiet." Then she thanked them and sat down. Years from now, when Harper told her own version of the story, at school, at work, or maybe to her own children, she wouldn't start with the slap. She'd start with the silence that followed. And the woman who didn't break with a scream but with a system. And she'd say her mother taught her something about justice. That it doesn't always come like thunder. Sometimes it walks in on heels, quiet, certain, unshakable.